Amazing twist, struggling girl discovers billionaire's hidden test after returning $50,000 wallet. Emily knelt on the warm grass, wiping sweat from her brow as she continued picking up litter at Maplewood Park. Her eyes drifted up to the sun, a blinding reminder of the countless hours she juggled between cleaning houses and waiting tables. Each day bled into the next, and her dreams of college felt more like a distant, unattainable fantasy. Today, however, was different. The universe was about to throw her an unexpected curveball. She reached under a nearby bench and pulled out a sleek black wallet. A rush of adrenaline coursed through her veins as she opened it, revealing cash and credit cards that staggered her $50,000. The sheer amount nearly knocked the breath from her lungs. At that moment, temptation beckoned. It would be so easy to slip that cash into her pocket, buy the books she needed, and ease the burden on her mother and younger brother, Tyler. But her mother's lessons on honesty weighed heavily on her heart, pushing her to consider the owner instead. What if someone like her had lost everything in there? Fueled by a growing sense of moral responsibility, she began her search for Charles Anderson, the wallet's owner. Research revealed the man's towering reputation, a billionaire known for his philanthropy but also rumored to be reclusive and arrogant. As she stood outside his grand estate days later, doubt churned within her. Surely, in a world so steeped in wealth, he would see her as nothing more than a struggling girl clutching onto a false sense of nobility. Yet, she steadied her breath and knocked on the door. The opulence around her was suffocating, and fear clawed at her heart like a feral beast. Charles appeared, his demeanor demanding authority. When she returned the wallet, silence stretched thick between them. To Emily's surprise, instead of dismissing her, he offered her a mentorship, a test of her character and values. "Prove your integrity, and I'll guide you through your opportunities," he said, leaning forward, his eyes piercing through her thoughts. A swirl of emotions crashed within her. Could she truly navigate this new world? Weeks passed, and Emily found herself plunging deeper into his world of high-stakes meetings and business strategies. A strange exhilaration coursed through her, blending with an undercurrent of despair. She discovered a talent for strategic thinking that jolted her spirit. But with each passing day, doubt seeped in. The pressure mounted as whispers of condescension filled the air. Could someone like her truly belong here, or was she merely a pretender? The weight of her family's needs clashed hard against her aspirations. Torn between valuing her integrity and reaching for the dizzying heights of success, Emily faced a pivotal juncture where the highest stakes rendered every decision almost fatal. The line between right and wrong blurred, her heart wrestling with the very values that had been instilled within her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With Charles's mentoring molding her every action, she transitioned from cautious to confident. But that confidence brought hazy revelations about the nature of his tests. There was secrecy beneath the surface, questions flowering about how far she was willing to go for success. Just as she began to embrace her potential, shocking revelations shattered her excitement. Whispers of betrayal loomed, and an unexpected truth arose: her actions and their implications would unravel not just her future but the lives of her family as well. As pressures mounted from all sides, Emily found herself standing at an emotional precipice. Would she cling to her values or let go, diving deep into a world that glittered with greed? The choice cracked open, revealing the tangled web of moral dilemmas threatening not just her dreams but the very foundation of who she was. The truth loomed, and with it, a decision that could alter her world. Emily stood frozen in the gilded hallway of Charles's estate, her breath shallow and quickening. The room was adorned with lavish art and glittering chandeliers, yet it felt like a cage of expectations closing in around her. Each showcased piece whispered the story of success crafted by ruthless ambition. She couldn't shake the nagging awareness that her newfound confidence was as brittle as glass. The meetings had begun to blur into one another, merciless conversations about profit margins and market strategies churned in her mind. Emily often found herself filling the silence, offering ideas that felt uniquely hers, sparking interest from Charles and others in the room. Still, doubt prickled at the back of her mind. Was she simply a pawn in a game that had already been scripted? As days passed, she noticed how the atmosphere shifted around Charles whenever discussions about ethics arose. Subtle shifts from expressions of concern to tight-lipped silence sent chills down her spine. Beneath the surface of well-structured business discussions and secure financial forecasts lay a disquieting current. The implications of the decisions being made were not just numbers on a page, they were lives and families threatened by the choices of those at the top. One evening, after a particularly weary day, Emily found herself alone in the kitchen of the estate, her fingers absently stirring a pot of soup. She gazed out the window, watching the shadows lengthen as dusk descended. Her thoughts wandered back to Tyler, her little brother, and the burdens she felt escalating at home. What if her leap into this world of privilege separated her from the very essence of her family? The confrontation shaped itself in her mind, an inner dialogue sparking with intensity. She couldn't ignore the tightrope she walked. Charles saw potential in her, but was it her authenticity he valued or merely a reflection of ambition he wanted to cultivate? The more she excelled, the more she felt she strayed from the person she had always been. It felt wrong and exhilarating, a cocktail that left her breathless. Pushing against the tide of anxiety, Emily decided it was time to confront Charles about the implications of their partnership. She didn't want to find herself trapped in an environment that thrived on manipulation and deceit. The potential of turning into what she despised was the true nightmare. She could feel it creeping closer each day. The following morning, steeling herself against the anxiety knotting her stomach, she approached Charles in his office, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the crisp air. His posture was relaxed, yet it seemed he was waiting for her to speak. "Charles," she began, her voice steady as she forced the words into the open. "I need to understand what our path forward looks like. Are we focused on advancing at any cost? What are the moral implications of our decisions?" The surprise in his eyes was fleeting, quickly morphing into a calculating look. "Business is about making tough decisions, Emily. The stakes are high, and sometimes you must compromise." A pulse of frustration flared within her. Was this truly mentorship, or was he testing her loyalty in a game she barely understood? She realized that this wasn't just about her professional growth, it was about her moral foundation crumbling under the pressure. "Compromise is one thing," she pressed on, her hands tightly gripping the edge of the desk. "But sacrificing my values isn't something I'm willing to do." The air thickened between them, an electric charge of tension crackling as Charles leaned back, eyes narrowing. "You may need to rethink what you believe, Emily." Her heart raced at this revelation, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her like a vice. What would be the nature of her ambitions? The ground felt unstable beneath her, and as she stepped back from his desk, Emily sensed the incoming storm. Where would she land when the dust settled? In that pivotal moment, she realized that studying strategy in business wasn't just about numbers and percentages, it was an intricate dance of ethics and the choices that framed her future. In the weeks ahead, she would have to navigate deeper connections, and her next steps would determine the boundaries of her integrity. The fight for her soul had begun. Would she remain steadfast against the tide of ambition threatening to sweep her away, or would she succumb to the allure of success at any cost? The answers she sought were still shrouded in ambiguity, and the path ahead promised to be tumultuous. Would she emerge unscathed, or would her choices entangle her in a web of regret? Emily spent the following weeks in a nebulous haze, torn between her growing ambition and the nagging questions gnawing at her conscience. The sumptuous estate of Charles felt less like an achievement and more like a gilded cage, and she couldn't shake the feeling that every polished surface concealed darker realities. Each meeting felt increasingly like a performance, motions being followed rather than genuine discussions. As she wrestled with her commitment to her newfound career, a defining incident jolted her from her inertia. One afternoon, as she walked through a lavish local park, trees shedding their golden leaves, her phone buzzed with a message from Charles asking her to check on some documents left in his office. It was routine, she reminded herself, though her heartbeat quickened. She vividly recalled how those documents had dotted previous discussions with lowlights of ethical ambiguity. Expecting to find a mundane assortment of papers, Emily opened the door to Charles's office, but the atmosphere shifted palpably as she laid eyes on something unexpected: a leather wallet, thick and slightly open, lying upon the mahogany desk. Instinct urged her to ignore it, to focus on the task she had. Yet, curiosity propelled her forward, and she reached out to snatch it up. A quick glance inside revealed several stacks of cash, accompanied by a set of cards with names and numbers that made her pulse race. This was no ordinary wallet, it belonged to someone of considerable means, perhaps even a competitor, she thought. The temptation to pocket the cash was immediate, a flash of illicit promise coursing through her veins, yet her internal compass screamed otherwise. She thought of Tyler, the countless bills piling up at home, the sacrifices they had both made. Money that wasn't hers lingered in the back of her mind like a question mark. In that moment, she made a decision that could define her: she wouldn't take the easy way out. Instead, Emily swiftly rescheduled her priorities and left the office, wallet in hand. She headed toward Charles, intention heavy in her mind. Knocking on the door, she hesitated, considering the consequences of her next move. Did she really want to unravel the vast web of complexities binding her to this world, especially in front of Charles? When he looked up, surprised, she placed the wallet on his desk. "You left this behind," she stated firmly. "It has a considerable amount of cash inside." A flicker of admiration crossed his face, quickly masked by skepticism. "Not many would have done that, Emily. You realize how rare integrity is in our field?" Her heart surged, there was no more avoiding it. "Is that what you value, Charles? Is that what you see in me?" The question hung heavy in the air, a defining moment waiting to be seized. One corner of his mouth quirked upward, yet the underlying tension bubbled. "Integrity is a luxury in business, Emily. Sometimes, it's not about what you choose, it's about how you choose to present it." His words sank into her consciousness, and in their wake, uncertainty washed over her. Was Charles testing her? She had received vague hints, but now she wondered if this moment revealed more than she'd realized. Was she being groomed to take on a role that twisted her values in the name of gain? And if so, what was the true test he was conducting, a measure of loyalty or a trial of moral strength? As her breath quickened, she recognized the gravity of the choice before her. She had stepped fully into a high-stakes game, and each decision echoed far beyond the walls of the estate. Embracing ambition didn't mean abandoning her principles, but could she maintain both in a world that demanded compromise? Stepping back, the wheels in her mind began to turn, planning her next move in this precarious game. The challenge had been laid bare, and she was acutely aware that the simple act of returning a wallet might serve as the preamble to more complex entanglements. The true nature of her journey was about to unfold, and with it arrived an alarming realization: her loyalty might not be the only thing under scrutiny. As the room seemed to close in around them, Emily sensed an impending confrontation looming just beyond the horizon. Determination flared within her as she prepared for the path ahead. A confrontation was inevitable. What stakes would she pull into the light, and how would she navigate the looming shadows that suggested darker truths hidden beneath the surface? The moment had come for Emily to strategize, test her boundaries, and discover if the woman emerging within her could break free from being merely a pawn in someone else's game. The following week cast a shadow of expectation over Emily as she navigated the intricacies of her daily routine. Each knock on the office door ignited internal alarms, her breath momentarily catching in her throat at the prospect of facing Charles. Still, she understood that each encounter could provide new insights, not just into his character, but into her own developing resilience. Charles's casual demeanor could easily deceive many, yet Emily was astutely aware of the underlying currents swirling just beneath the surface. Following the incident with the wallet, he appeared subtly different, perhaps impressed, yet she sensed a keen scrutiny that never ceased. Meetings felt less like exchanges of ideas and more like a chess match, each participant immediately analyzing the other's vulnerabilities. It wasn't just about the work, it became a personal trial, a stringent examination of her values and resolve. But with every challenging conversation, an unexpected fortitude arose within her. She began vocalizing her thoughts more confidently, expressing her ideas and concerns with increasing clarity. Where once she felt like an imposter, caught in someone else's narrative, she started to weave in her own threads. One afternoon, during a company brainstorming session, Emily found herself surrounded by colleagues discussing a controversial investment strategy involving a competitor. The idea was bold, daring, and skimming the edge of ethical boundaries, yet all hands seemed raised in agreement. Only one voice was dissenting, hers. "I have concerns about transparency and how we might navigate this if it backfires," she stated without trepidation. Carefully, she laid out her argument, detailing not just the ethical implications but potential implications for the company's reputation. Silence consumed the room. Eyes turned toward her, some scrutinizing, others considering. Charles caught her gaze, the flicker of approval mingling with uncertainty in his expression. It was a moment of clarity. She understood she had shifted the narrative, if only for an instant. Days passed with a different energy enveloping Emily. Conversations deepened, and she began pursuing deeper projects where her insights could lead the charge. Despite the internal struggle still bubbling within, she crafted strategies that aligned her ambitions with her principles. She formulated a plan, intent on showing that success could intersect with integrity. However, an unsettling thought remained lodged in her mind: Charles's earlier words about presentation. Was she, unknowingly, playing into a game of appearances, her newfound assertiveness merely another mask over her doubts? As she delved deeper into her work, Emily found herself uncovering hidden aspects of the company's operations that puzzled her. Some decisions now appeared murky and were obscured by fine legal language. She wondered if the web Charles had woven was only expanding. What other secrets lay beneath the surface? One evening, as she pored over reports late into the night, she logged into a secure section of the company's systems and stumbled across a set of financial discrepancies. Her heart raced as she recognized that instead of petty irregularities, she unearthed a potential cover-up involving substantial investments made without board knowledge. Emily's instincts flared into hyperdrive. This could be her defining moment. She had the opportunity to challenge powerful forces at play, not to mention question her ongoing relationship with both Charles and her own moral compass. But uncertainty laced through her thoughts. Would bringing this to light jeopardize her position? Or worse, expose her naivete in a world wrapped in secrecy? She recalled her choice to return the wallet, a decision to uphold her integrity. Would she now turn her back on that commitment, remaining silent as she potentially stumbled upon a layer of deceit that could destroy lives, including her own? Determined to make a choice, she paced her small apartment, heart pounding, reflecting on the stakes. Emily understood the risk would test her mettle as never before. The next step was critical, an intersection of professional ambition and personal integrity. The confrontation loomed ahead, but which path would she take? The game was intensifying, and the next move would define her legacy, possibly even her future within the company she had strived to build. With every minute ticking by, Emily felt the weight of impending decisions pressing down. Would she unveil the truth, or would silence be her shield? Emily's resolve intensified as she stood before her computer, the glow of the screen illuminating the worries etched on her face. She felt every heartbeat reverberate through her consciousness, each thump a reminder of the critical choice ahead. The financial discrepancies loomed like a specter, darkening her thoughts and pulling her deeper into a labyrinth of ethical responsibility. Questions ricocheted through her mind. What if she misinterpreted the data? The weight of a single decision, one that could potentially unravel her career, perched on her shoulders like an encumbered shroud. Emily hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, contemplating the implications of each keystroke. Silence enveloped her small apartment, amplifying her inner turmoil, forcing her to confront the most unsettling query of all: what kind of person did she want to be? Intent on clarity, she poured herself a glass of water, hoping the routine would steady her racing thoughts. As she took a sip, an idea crystallized. If she were to reveal any discrepancies, it had to be through careful documentation and a focus on transparency. She thought about her meetings with Charles and how his presence often felt like a storm, both captivating and intimidating. Would he view her concerns as a sign of weakness or strength? Instead of merely disclosing her findings to him, what if she organized them? She envisioned creating a comprehensive report, laying out not just the discrepancies, but also her cautious analysis of the potential fallout. This wasn't just an act of rebellion, it represented a commitment to transparency. Emily took a deep breath, allowing determination to replace doubt. The idea excited her, kindling a fire within that had been dormant for too long. The following day, armed with her newfound resolve, she arrived at the office early, the quiet halls reverberating with possibility. She seized every moment to prepare her report, organizing the facts into an outline that balanced clarity with caution. As colleagues began to filter in, she allowed them to sweep her into casual conversations, but her focus remained steadfast. When Charles entered, the air felt thick with the anticipation of their usual encounters. He caught her eye, and for a heartbeat, she caught a glimpse of that familiar scrutiny. Yet, instead of retreating into the background, she tilted her chin upward, her stance subtly more assertive. "Charles, can we talk?" she ventured after a tense meeting. She motioned towards the conference room, already aware of the implications her choice carried. They settled at opposite ends of the long table, and Emily carefully placed her document before him. "I found some discrepancies in the financial reports," she began, her voice steady, conscious of the gravity of her disclosure. She detailed her findings methodically, showcasing not just the numbers but the potential risks intertwined within them. He listened, a control his expression masked, yet the flicker in his eyes revealed intrigue. As she progressed through her analysis, she felt a rush of empowerment wash over her. This wasn't merely a confrontation, it was a declaration of her principles. Once she finished, silence hung palpably in the air. Charles leaned back, the weight of her words resting heavily. "You realize, Emily, this could lead to far-reaching consequences beyond the immediate issues you've highlighted," he remarked, his voice laced with an undertone that both challenged and disarmed her. "I'm aware," she replied, catching a glimpse of her own reflection in his eyes, a woman at a crossroads, ready to stand firm in her convictions, whether or not it served her best interests. In that moment, she understood that the conversation was not merely about discrepancies, it was about revealing who she truly was, the type of leader she aspired to be. However, as the discussion deepened, Emily's heart picked up its pace again, riddled with the realization that this was just the beginning. The stakes were higher now, and Charles's genuine reaction could tilt toward revelation or retaliation. With a nod, she realized the chapter of her transformation was far from over, the complexities of her journey still unresolved. What lay ahead? What secrets did Charles guard, and how deeply would they entangle her? Determination solidified within her, a shield against the uncertainty. Emily was ready to face the consequences of her choice but braced herself. Would she emerge triumphant or unravel in the process? Emily could feel the unyielding weight of Charles's scrutiny bearing down upon her, an oppressive reminder that every word she uttered could redefine her standing within the organization. The silence that followed her declaration felt suffocating, thick with unspoken implications. She watched his expression closely, searching for clues, but his impassive demeanor concealed any inner turmoil. "Let us not be naive here," he finally spoke, the corners of his mouth forming a careful line. "Discrepancies of this nature could jeopardize more than just your career. It could shake the very foundations of this company." His tone was pointed, an unshrouded warning cloaked in professionalism. For a heartbeat, Emily's conviction wavered, and a familiar thread of doubt began to pull her back into uncertainty. But as she held his gaze, a spark ignited within her. She was no longer merely a cog in the corporate machine. She could choose to be an agent of change, however risky that might be. "Yes, I understand the consequences," she asserted, her voice unwavering. "But ignoring the truth isn't a solution. If we want to be leaders in our field, we need to act with integrity." She sensed a crack in Charles's controlled facade, a flicker of surprise followed by what she believed to be a moment of respect. For so long, she had seen him as an immovable force. Now, he appeared more human, complex. Was this an opportunity for collaboration or a ploy to undermine her? "What you're suggesting takes courage, Emily," he said, leaning forward slightly. "But courage without a plan is reckless. Have you considered how this will affect your colleagues? Your findings could easily incite a panic." His tone shifted, not patronizing, but rather presenting a challenge. Was he testing her resolve further? Emily took a steadying breath, the air filled with possibilities that had been absent just moments before. "Yes, and I need to prepare for that," she answered, feeling the adrenaline surge through her veins. "But I also believe we owe it to everyone involved to face it head-on, transparently." A moment passed, charged with tension, the stakes palpable. Charles nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing as he contemplated her words. "All right. If you're serious, what's your next step?" Emily felt the ground shift beneath her. This was her chance to shape her response, to outline a plan that would address both the discrepancies and the potential fallout. She had the analysis ready, but now it was time to assemble a strategy that would empower rather than alienate. "First, I want to present the findings to our senior management, along with a proposed timeline for discussion on transparency protocols," she articulated, heart racing. "Then we could implement workshops for the team, to engender a culture of openness moving forward." Charles considered her proposition, the lines around his mouth softening slightly. "This is bold and may gain some support, but do you realize that not everyone will be on board? Some may see you as a threat." That was a question she hadn't truly entertained until now. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. What if her revelations transformed her into a target rather than a trailblazer? Emily's resolve crumbled momentarily as the prospect loomed larger. "I'm willing to take that risk," she asserted, feeling a fire rekindle. "I'd rather be remembered as someone who tried to do the right thing than one who turned a blind eye." Watching Charles's reaction, she noted the slight tilt of his head, an acknowledgement dawning in his expression. "You're not who I thought you were, Emily. This could change everything." But as their discourse blossomed into mutual respect, uncertainty still nagged at her, a reminder that her path was fraught with unknowns. As the conversation wound down, she felt fire and fear both coursing through her veins. Leaving the conference room, she understood that the real test had just begun. Momentum was building, but the threats she faced were real, and the stakes had only increased. What intricate web had she just begun to unravel, and would she have what it took to navigate the pitfalls awaiting her ahead? The looming question shimmered in her mind, even as she steeled herself for what was destined to come next. The days following her meeting with Charles transformed into a whirlwind of planning and self-reflection. Emily immersed herself in the nuances of her upcoming presentation, poring over her data, each statistic a puzzle piece she had to arrange into a coherent narrative. She sat late in the office, the fluorescent lights casting a clinical glow over stacks of reports. The office buzzed with colleagues, but she felt utterly isolated, like a lone ship navigating tumultuous seas. Trepidation about the impending presentation hovered like a cloud. Each moment she replayed Charles's approving nod echoed in her mind, but it was inevitably accompanied by the recollection of his warning. Many would view her as a threat. Could she withstand the backlash? The notion made her pulse quicken, a tight coil of anxiety that tugged at her stomach. Determined, she decided to invite a few trusted colleagues for coffee. They gathered in the corner cafe, its quaint charm contrasting with the sterile cubicles they typically occupied. Emily took a deep breath, sizing up her audience: Laura from marketing, a skeptic with a sharp intellect; Raj from finance, always analytical and composed; and Maya, whose enthusiasm often masked a pragmatic outlook. As she broached the topic, setting the stage for the findings she had uncovered, she found an unexpected thrill in their candor. They pushed back, challenging her assumptions and presenting counterarguments. The discourse thickened with tension and engagement, revealing complexities she hadn't considered. Each question ignited her passion. It was no longer one-sided data, these were discussions that shaped perspectives. "I see where you're coming from, Emily," Laura finally said, her skepticism melting into intrigue. "But have you thought about how this plays out if management doesn't react well? It might be easier to tread lightly." Emily nodded, absorbing the weight of Laura's cautionary note. "But if we don't approach this transparently, aren't we complicit in the culture of secrecy that has permeated our organization? The potential risk of harm is greater than the discomfort of addressing it." Raj intently studied the floor before looking back up at her. "What if we help you shape this discussion? We might not change minds, but we could prepare you for the questions that could arise. We need a strategy." That simple offer triggered a shift within Emily. She felt the fog of isolation beginning to lift. The apprehension that had surrounded her like a fog thickening into clarity infused her lungs with purpose. They were being allies, not just her sounding board but her champions. Back in her office, she dived into strategy formulation, collaborating with her colleagues to establish potential questions that management might pose. They crafted concise responses, hypothesized objections, and listed possible objections from varying departments. Hours morphed into days, yet with each interaction, Emily's confidence solidified. The fear of being labeled a threat diminished. Instead, she was gaining allies, proving that courage could be a unifying force rather than a dividing one. But as she felt momentum on her side, the stakes heightened. What if management failed to appreciate the urgency of her message? What if her colleagues, emboldened, faced repercussions for their support? Questions banged against her consciousness, demanding attention. As the day of her presentation drew near, Emily took stock of her emotional state, a mix of eagerness and apprehension. Her heart raced like a metronome, each beat an insistence that she was on the edge of something monumental. The evening before her presentation, Emily stood in front of her mirror, practicing her opening lines. Would she find her voice amidst the cacophony? Could she embody the integrity she had been fighting for? She slipped into her bed, restless within the sheets, and as dawn broke the next morning, she resolved to step forward, hold her ground, and face whatever would come her way. Whatever the outcome, she knew she was no longer merely a passive participant in this corporate landscape. The needle had shifted, she was an active player in reshaping the company's future. As she entered the conference room, she swallowed hard, steeling herself. But the moment she reached for the doorknob, a chilling thought struck her. Had she truly prepared for the worst-case scenario? And what if her fiercest opposition lay closer than she ever realized? The conference room felt both cavernous and claustrophobic, a paradoxical space that mirrored Emily's spiraling thoughts. She stood before a long, sleek table, her colleagues gathered before her like interrogators, expectant eyes boring into her. Anxiety clenched her throat, but she focused on the task at hand, drawing on her preparation as a lifeline. With a deep breath, she launched into her presentation. Her voice was steady, but her heart hammered beneath her blazer. Slide after slide painted a portrait of her research's significance, each visual a testament to untapped potential just waiting for the organization's embrace. The room absorbed her words, though skepticism rippled beneath their placid exteriors. "Thank you for your insights, Emily," Charles said, interrupting her train of thought. His tone was measured, devoid of the warmth she had felt in their previous encounters. "What you propose is ambitious, but I also see several risks involved. How do you plan to navigate internal resistance?" The question hung heavy in the air, igniting a thread of panic through her core. She was prepared for skepticism, she had rehearsed for it. Yet the charm of nudging peers toward enlightenment faded against Charles's authoritative presence. It felt like diving into a whirlpool with no lifeline. Before she could respond, Laura interjected. If we amplify Emily's message while also presenting it alongside alternative viewpoints, we could diminish potential backlash. It's about framing, Charles. Emily seized this lifeline, her confidence swelling again. Exactly. We want to foster a discussion rather than create divides. The issues we're facing require all perspectives to be engaged. It's not just about me presenting the findings, it's about us as a collective moving forward. But as she spoke, she caught a flicker of discontent on Charles's face. A moment of doubt crept into her mind. Was he merely playing a role in this corporate theater, eager to squash innovation beneath tradition's weight? The back and forth continued, objections surfacing like jagged rocks beneath the polished surface of their dialogue. Sales projections, potential market impacts, internal culture all dissected in a way that felt increasingly less supportive. With every query, it seemed uncertainty expanded within the room. As the presentation drew toward its conclusion, Emily's pulse quickened. She fought to maintain composure, reaching the final slide a compelling call to action. Would her colleagues see the potential that she saw? Or had she miscalculated their willingness to pivot? When she finished, silence draped the room. Emily's heart thudded as she surveyed the expressions around the table, searching for a sign, a glimmer of approval or rejection. Finally, it was Raj who broke the stillness. I appreciate the passion behind your argument, but I think we need a clearer outline of what this might mean for our budgets. Our department can uphold the existing structures, but we also need tangible benefits from the risk. His words edged closer and closer to the trepidation Emily feared. She could feel the room retracting into caution, and it made her pulse race with anxiety. But then she remembered her allies, the purpose she'd felt within her team. Gathering her strength, she retorted, Raj, we can't just fear economic implications without considering the risks of inaction. Our stagnation could lead to far worse repercussions in the long run, both financially and culturally. We need to reposition ourselves, and that starts with embracing this conversation. The tension in the air shifted palpably. Emily sensed that she was standing at the precipice of a profound transformation. Her words were reverberating back to her, and she could see the slightest crack in the armor of skepticism. But just as hope flickered to life, a voice sliced through the remaining silence. Maya leaned forward with an expression she hadn't noticed until then. So, what happens next if you receive pushback from upper management? Are we all ready to face the fallout together? Emily froze, the question landing like a stone amid the budding optimism. Could they withstand those repercussions? Would she have the strength to guide them through what felt like an inevitable storm? As unease swept back through the room and her thoughts spiraled, Emily realized she was on the edge of something crucial, not just for her career, but for her integrity. The reality settled upon her. In this pivotal moment, she wasn't just casting light into shadows, she was inviting others to step into them alongside her. Determination surged within her, but with that ferocity came an understanding that the distance from theory to practice was often treacherous. The air thickened with her deliberation, and as she queued up her next words, she couldn't shake the feeling that her biggest challenge had only just begun. In responding to Maya, she could chart a course that either unified her team or tested their resolve to unfurl their wings. "Here's what I know," she began, her voice steady yet laced with an urgency as rich as the moment's weight. "The time has come not just to act but to connect on a shared risk. Are we prepared for what's to come?" In that charged atmosphere, one question loomed larger than all others: would they rise as a collective ally, or splinter in the face of true change? Emily inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of her words sink into the silence. She targeted each gaze with a fierce determination, making silent appeals to reason and camaraderie. But her thoughts roiled beneath the surface. Could they truly face the storm ahead? The diverse reactions surrounding her felt like reflections of her own insecurities. Half-hearted nods, hesitant frowns, and hopeful glances mingled into a tapestry of uncertainty. Looking back at the risks I've presented, she continued, it's about more than just numbers or projections. It's about our legacy as a team. We can't continue to make timid moves while the landscape shifts beneath us. Each of us has to commit to this evolution, and that requires every voice at this table, including those apprehensive about the change. A flicker of resolve ignited in Laura's eyes. I want this to succeed, Emily. But how do we convince those above us to see the bigger picture without overwhelming them? Charles was silent now, observing the dynamics unfold, his critical gaze shifting subtly. Emily recognized that this was a critical juncture not just in her presentation, but in her interactions with her peers. The old instincts to defer, to yield under pressure, began to fade. Instead, clarity emerged, a vision of what leadership could truly mean. I want us to build a prototype, she proposed, projecting confidence even as her heart pounded. Let us create a tangible representation of our research. We can simulate the potential impacts and prove its feasibility to upper management. It's one thing to discuss ideas, it's another to present a working model. Raj leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised. And how much will that cost, Emily? We're walking into uncharted territory, and given the doubts already expressed, it feels precarious. It will cost us less than stagnation, she countered, her voice sharp yet steady. We have the opportunity to innovate, but innovation requires investment. If we don't act now, we may be left grasping to catch up with competitors who are already advancing. We owe it to ourselves and this organization. Silence again enveloped the room, each person's thoughts riveted to their own perspectives, some intrigued, others wary. The vivid image of her proposal painted itself in her mind, she could visualize the prototype, the potential conversations it could ignite. Maya, eyes narrowed in contemplation, chimed back. But how do we handle dissent, Emily? If we face opposition, it could derail our momentum. An electric charge pulsed through Emily at the acknowledgement of dissent. This wasn't just a speaking point, it deeply resonated with her, the very heart of what her confrontation entailed, her struggle against self-doubt, the fight to be heard amidst a cacophony of challenges. We manage dissent together, Emily asserted, her voice rising with conviction. Each challenge is an opportunity for us to refine our message. If we prepare for pushback, we will emerge stronger. It isn't just about presenting an idea, it's about building a narrative with resilience at its core. We confront, we adapt, we grow. In those moments, she felt a part of something broader than herself. She was no longer just fighting for validation, now, she was advocating for progress, for a unified vision that transcended individual hesitations. Encouraged by the flicker of enthusiasm coming from her colleagues, she knew the battle to shift perspectives would be formidable but worthwhile. But with the glimmers of hope came the lingering specter of apprehension. Would she be able to cultivate this resolve in others? Would they all rise together, unveiling their collective potential, or would the shadows of doubt stifle their momentum? As they pondered her ideas, the atmosphere filled with tension and unspoken possibilities. Emily felt it, the turning tide, the juncture where vision met action, and the risk that every member of the team would have to embrace. She looked around the room, pausing momentarily as uncertainty coiled within her. What if we're not ready for the outcome of our actions? What if it all falls apart? Amidst crackling energy, she realized her vulnerability could be a strength, an essential facet of her leadership. But what if it soars? She replied softly, directed at herself as much as to the group. And so she posed the question, heart throbbing with anticipation. Are we willing to be brave, irrespective of the consequences? In that moment, Emily sensed that true innovation came not just from the confidence of her plans, but from the discomfort of navigating uncertainty. Just as she began to kindle their resolve, a sudden thought pierced through her focus. How would those above react when they got wind of their ambition? The question loomed darkly, looming even larger than any of the previous doubts. With unease swirling like autumn leaves caught in a gust, she steeled herself for potential clashes with those who held power. Would this fight for innovation also require a confrontation with authority? As the meeting continued, the challenge ahead crystallized in her mind. Could she not only persuade her colleagues but also harness the courage to confront the very forces that had the power to lead their endeavor to victory or defeat? Emily stood at the threshold of transformation, her heart racing as the echoes of the prior conference room discussions reverberated in her thoughts. The stakes had risen higher than she ever anticipated, and with new resolve ignited, she faced the daunting prospect of not just advocating for change, but defending it against entrenched power dynamics. She dedicated the following days to fortifying her strategy, determined to build an invincible front that unified her colleagues behind a shared vision. The prototype concept she proposed morphed into a collaborative project, generating excitement and camaraderie among her team. Guided by her commitment to transparency, she harnessed every ounce of energy to cultivate a collective identity grounded in integrity. Each interaction became an opportunity for Emily to demonstrate her leadership capabilities. She reinforced her belief that change could transcend individual ambition, it could uplift the entire organization. Early collaboration fueled a palpable sense of shared purpose, with her colleagues rallying around her once hesitant ideas, softening the edges of previous doubts, just as fall leaves gave way to the promise of spring. Emboldened by this burgeoning alliance, Emily now prepared to confront Charles once more, armed with the prototype and a comprehensive outline for their upcoming presentation to upper management. She envisioned success not just for herself, but as a blend of voices rising in unison, a new anthem of authenticity and ambition. In the boardroom, every interaction with Charles became a subtle negotiation. Each encounter was charged, old perceptions clashing with emerging realities. But with every resilient step she took, the door stood ajar for the possibility of collaboration. They examined the prototype together, discussing potential applications and repercussions in raw, honest exchanges, laying the groundwork for what she could only hope would be a paradigm shift. The day of the presentation finally arrived, and Emily felt the electric pulse of anticipation thrumming beneath her skin. The atmosphere buzzed with the weight of unspoken expectations, yet she exuded confidence, ready to share not just numbers, but a vision that connected ethics with profit. As she stood before the executives and their discerning gazes, she felt less like the struggling girl who had once knelt in the park and more like a powerful advocate for ethical innovation. She unveiled her findings with clarity and decisiveness, adhering to her belief that transparency could diffuse fear and suspicion. Today, we stand at a crossroads, she began, her voice unwavering as she made eye contact with no one in particular, allowing her passion to surface through iterations of conviction. Every decision we make reverberates beyond our balance sheets. We must choose courage, for the market thrives on integrity. Throughout the presentation, Emily displayed the prototype, seamlessly integrating data and human narratives, proving the potential benefits of transparency, innovation, and social responsibility. By the time she articulated their shared commitment to nurturing a culture of openness, resonant nods began to spread like wildfire across the board. "Your insights have merit, Emily," one of the directors spoke, a mixture of concern and curiosity in his words. "But how will we manage the old guard, the ones resistant to change?" Emily took a deep breath, prepared to address what she had wrestled with for weeks. "Through education and a phased approach. We show them that integrity and innovation are not opposing forces. We invite them to participate, to be part of the solution." There it was, the pivotal moment. The energy in the room shifted, tides turning as her words resonated with a fresh urgency. After days of arduous navigating intricate dynamics, it felt as though she could finally breathe. Then came the unexpected. Charles leaned forward, his mood enigmatic. "This is an impressive undertaking, but it requires unwavering commitment from all of us. Are you prepared to lead this charge, even when faced with adversity?" Her chest tightened, yet the fire within her ignited. "I am ready. Together, we can foster a culture built on transparency rather than trepidation." In a sea of skeptical faces, determination radiated from Emily. She had traveled through the valley of self-doubt, emerged amidst ethical dilemmas, and carved her own path through tenacity and collaborative spirit. Before stepping away from the podium, she felt gratitude swelling. She recognized it wasn't just her triumph, but the collective surge that had raised her up, a testament to the power of shared values. This was not just her achievement, it represented a transformation for everyone involved. They could embrace the uncertainty of the future together, building bridges rather than barricades. As the meeting concluded, applause erupted, but it wasn't mere formality, it resonated with acknowledgement of their joint effort, a shift narratively and structurally. She looked to her colleagues and saw pride reflected in their eyes, and intertwined within that joy was recognition of the journey she had taken alongside them. Days turned into weeks, and as Emily navigated her role, the details of logistics and corporate strategies began to blend seamlessly. The collaborative spirit continued to thrive, reshaping how they interacted and how decisions being made would be addressed. She cemented her leadership, not by dominance but by allowing others to lend their voices, ultimately weaving inclusion into their corporate fabric. Emily had truly transformed. She felt competent and secure in her values and decisions. It wasn't just about reaching the heights of success, but redefining what that success could mean for everyone involved: team members, stakeholders, and the community. The moment of fulfillment arrived, and as she stood before yet another team gathering, it became evident, she was no longer the struggling girl burdened by self-doubt. She had emerged as a dynamic leader, fostering hope and resilience beneath the weight of challenge, a beacon amidst shifting tides. In this newfound light of recognition and achievement, Emily grasps the significance of their work and her place within it. She saw each day as an opportunity to inspire growth in others, conscious that as they moved forward, her journey would reflect solidarity and purpose, guiding them toward sustainable success. Now is the time to embrace your own transformative journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel.